Shalom Aleichem, this is Rabbi Kovacs, and for Shabbat Behar, the 32nd day of the Omer, Mishnah Yomi is in chapter Zion 7 of Sotah, Mishnah Hey and Vav today. And again, we're explaining the items that have to be said in Lashon HaKodesh, in Hebrew. And actually, the last two prakim also will describe the procedure of Meshuach Milchama and the Egla Arufa that were on our list in Mishnah Bet of chapter 7. Hey, let's get into Mishnah. Hey, brachot uklalot ketzad. Blessings and curses. How did that go? Kevon she'avri Yisrael at the Yarden. When the Jewish people crossed through the Jordan River actually split and parted for them, kind of like the Red Sea. Uvo el har Grizim vel har Eival. And they came to the mountains, these hills that are sort of facing each other, Har Grizim and Har Eival, Shebe Shomron. They're in the Shomron, the northern region of Eretz Yisrael, Shebetzad Shechem, right outside Shechem, Shebe Etzil Elonei Moreh. They're by Elonei Moreh, the plains of Moreh. The Mishnah explains how we know that Elonei Moreh is also Shechem, that same area, Shneamar, Halo Hema, Be'ever HaYarden, Art Har Grizim and Har Eival, just on the other side of the Jordan River, but by Elonei Moreh. This is in Devarim chapter 11. Lahalan hu omer, and another place back in Bereshit that says V'yavor Avram. And Avram, even before he was Avraham, when he first entered Eretz Yisrael, before the change of name and the covenant and everything, he came into Eretz Yisrael, Be'aretz od mikum Shechem od Elon Moreh, to Shechem, to the plains of Moreh. So ma Elon Moreh, just like Elon Moreh, ha'amor lahalon, that said about Avraham Avinu, Shechem, that was Shechem off Elon Moreh, Amor Khan. So too here, when the Jewish people as a nation entered under the leadership of Yehoshua, that same day they crossed the Yarden, Shechem. They went all the way to Shechem, to Har Grizim, Har Eival. So what did they do at Har Grizim, Har Eival? Shisha Shvatim alo l'rosh Har Grizim. 6 of the tribes went up the hill of Har Grizim. V'shisha shvatim alu l'rosh Har Eival. The other 6 went up Har Eival. V'hakohanim v'haLevim ha'aron omdim l'mata be'emsa. The Kohanim and the Leviim, though it wasn't all the Leviim, a lot of Leviim went up the hill, but the elders, the officers, they were in the middle with the Aron Kodesh. HaKohanim makifim at the Aron. The Kohanim were standing around the Aron in a circle. HaLevim at the Kohanim. The Leviim were around the Kohanim. V'kol Yisrael mikan l'kan. And all of the Jewish people were on one side or the other, either Har Grizim or Har Eival. Shneamar, as it's described in Yehoshua and Joshua, chapter 8, V'chol Yisrael uzkenav, all of the Jewish people and their elders, V'sholtrim, their officers, Shoftav, their judges, Omdim mizei u'mizei la'aron. They're standing on one side or the other of the Aron Kodesh, on Har Grizim and Har Eival. And what would they do? Hafchu pneihem klope Har Grizim u'fotchu b'brocha. The Kohanim and Levim in the middle, they would turn their face towards Har Grizim and begin with a blessing. For example, Baruch Ha'ish, blessed is the man asher lo ya'aseh fesel u'maseicha, who does not make an engraved idol or a image of metal, something idolatrous. Ve'elu, and these, both sides, onin amen. They would say amen. My theory is maybe this place was chosen because it would echo, that they would be able to hear on both hills what was said in the middle, and then the amen would be resounding, would echo back and forth. Then Havchu Pneim Klape Har Eival, then the Kohanim Levim in the middle, they turned towards Har Eival, Fotchu Beklala, they began the curses. Orur Ha'ish Asher Yosef Esel Mazacha, cursed is a man who, God forbid, makes an engraved image or a metal idol, an idolatrous thing. Elu Onim Amen. And both sides again would answer Amen, a resounding Amen. Until they finished all of the blessings and the curses. And they're all in Devarim, Deuteronomy, chapter 11. And they would take turns, one blessing, one curse. I think the lesson is, you're not neutral. You're either going up or, God forbid, going down. You can't just assume you're neutral. Blessings, curses, 2 different sides. There's a lot of symbolism to this, so the Gemara gets into it quite a bit more. The Mefarshim. And then the Mishnah continues, Achar Kach, after the blessings and curses, Heviu et Avonim, they brought the stones that they had taken out of the Jordan River when they walked through the Jordan River, Uvonu with the Mizbeach, they built a Mizbeach with them. V'saduhu besid, and they coated it with plaster to protect it, Ukotvu alav, and then they wrote on these stones, Et kol divrei Torah v'shivim lashon, the entire Torah in 70 languages. Shenamar, as it said, Be'er hetev, back in Devarim chapter 27, you write them on the write the words of the Torah. Be'er heitev means explained well. And not everyone, of course, knows the nuances of biblical Hebrew. So our sages learned this was miraculously translated into 70 languages. So people, even non-Jewish people, could come and see these laws. V'natlu et avonim, they took the stones, ubao v'lono bimkaman, and they traveled to their place, to Gilgal, and they slept in Gilgal that first night, even though they had miraculously traveled all the way from the Jordan River to Shechem, which is mamish not next to the Jordan River, and then they ended up spending the night in Gilgal. Now, there's an amazing lesson here that I personally have not seen in any of the Mefarshim, so you heard it here first. If someone has heard this idea, please let me know who else says it. Maybe it's not original. That in ancient times, they used to write the laws and the rules of the city or the kingdom at the entrance to the kingdom. Now, here Am Yisrael is writing the Torah, the rules of the Jewish people, but these stones that are accessible, people can read them, they end up in Shechem or in Gilgal, not at the entrance to Eretz Yisrael, but way inland, way inside. So my thinking is that the Iker, the real reflection of what it means to be a Jew, is not what's written on the stones or the tablets or the parchments. Because after all, a non-Jewish person traveling into Eretz Yisrael, they wouldn't get to Shechem for a long time, for a few days. They didn't have miracles, but they would see the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael living as faithful Jews in Eretz Yisrael, observing the commandments and serving Hashem, and they would see the rules lived out in Jewish lives before they even got to Shechem and read what was on the tablets and then said, oh yeah, these Jews are doing it right. So it seems to me the lesson here is that every Jewish man and woman needs to the best of our abilities, be a living embodiment of the ideas and the goals of the Holy Torah, and not rely on the Torah that's sitting in the Aron Kodesh in Shul, and not rely on the books that are on the shelf, but rely on how we live as human beings every day to be a Kiddush Hashem to all of the rest of humanity. So let's go on to Mishnah Vav. Birkat Kohanim Ketzad, the priestly benediction, the blessing that the Kohanim, the priests, give the people. How does that work? But Medina, outside of the temple, in everyday places, Omrim Ota Shalosh Brachot. They say three separate blessings, and people say Amen between every blessing, like you hear in Shacharit, done every day. In Sephardic congregations, the Kohanim themselves go up, and not just the Chazan saying it. In Eretz Yisrael, the Ashkenazim as well follow the custom of actually having the Kohanim do this mitzvah every day, not just on Yomim Tovim. But in the temple, it was done bracha achat. They would say the entire Yivarechecha, Hashem v'yishmerecha, until the very end, v'yasem l'cho shalom. They'd say it as all one blessing and say Amen after the whole thing. And another difference, B'mikdash, in the temple itself, Omer et Hashem kichtavo. The Kohanim would say the name of Hashem as it's written, with a Yud and a Hey, etc. Over Medina, and outside the temple, B'kinuyav, in the kinui form, the nickname form, the appellation, which is Shem Adnut, that we commonly use to this day. B'Medina, outside the temple, Kohanim nosim et yedehen keneged kotfehen. The Kohanim would raise their hands to shoulder level. Over Mikdash, in the temple itself, al gabe rashehen. They would raise their hands to be higher than their heads. And the Bartner explains that the Shekhinah, the divine presence, would rest on their hands, or they're giving this blessing with the special name as it's written. So they as a respect, they wanted their hands to be the highest level they could. Chutz mikon gadol, except for the high priest himself, she'ena magbiet yadav l'malam in a tzitz. He wouldn't raise his hands above his head just to face level, because he has a tzitz, that golden plate on his forehead that says Kodesh Lashem, and it uses Hashem's name on that ornament on his forehead, so it would be a little bit rude to put his hands higher than that. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He says, "Off Kohen Gadol, even the Kohen Gadol, Magbia Yadav l'malam in a tzitz. He's allowed to raise his hands above the tzitz. Shneimar, as it says, Vayisa Aharon, and Aharon lifts up at Yadav, his hands, Ela'am vivarachem, to the nation and blesses them." So since Aharon the Kohen was the original high priest, and he was allowed to raise his hands, and there's no restriction there, so Yehuda learns out the same for any high priest. Good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom.